Stewart, I'm so glad to have you here at the Free Your Mind Conference.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure hearing you speak and getting to work with you for the conference. First and foremost, did you dig it? Did you have a good time?
I thought it was the best conference.
Really?
Great.
And you're not just saying that?
No, I've been to many, and usually when I go to these conferences, I feel drained from all the people and the energy.
Yes.
Here I was actually energized.
Yes, I mean, there is an energy to the conference, and it, by all means, is a very positive one.
Absolutely.
There was a fight in the hotel here at the venue, right? Yeah, and that was my first thing, is how could that have penetrated it? And then my next thought was, oh no, it couldn't have been from the conference. Could it have? Was not from the conference. And I shouldn't have ever doubted that it would have been. Stewart, I want to get into some of the deep experiences that you've had. And you've done many interviews, you've talked about this in great detail, and you're focused now on the healing, and you're really moving on. But for a moment, because there's a lot of laymen out there that are completely unfamiliar with this, and they have not heard just how deep the rabbit hole went for you personally, what you, flesh and bone, experienced, okay? We hear about these things, and sometimes we think science fiction movies, we don't think about it as a real person. The Montauk Project was a real thing. You experienced it. There was time travel, there was extraterrestrials, there was mind control. Give me the deep stuff, Stewart. Give me a little breakdown, a mini breakdown of some of the deep experiences that will blow most people's minds.
Right, and all those things that you mentioned are true. Plus, in addition, there was genetic manipulation, and the worst part of all was also the ritualistic events that took
So there was an act of evil behind these technologies. These were by no means benevolent. These were malevolent forces behind these very extreme technologies that most people assume, again, is just science fiction.
Correct, and the technology was initially alien, as you mentioned, and then the government changed it to assimilate their own ideas into it and use it for their own purposes. And the government was very interested, especially in those days, and the Montauk Project was 1970 to 1983. They were very interested in accessing superior technology to make themselves equal to the highest level of alien technology that they had come across.
Wow.
And my understanding is that as of the late 1980s, right after the Montauk Project, the government said to certain people that they could do everything the aliens could do now.
Very interesting. So they quickly absorbed all of that information and then some, perhaps.
Correct. They learned how to coordinate time travel and deep space travel using frequencies.
Walk me through that for a moment. What is time travel? Is the grandfather paradox something that is addressed in your understanding of time travel? And tell me about you. Have you time traveled?
Yes, in fact, I wrote about it in my book, The Montauk Alien Connection.
Montauk Alien Connection,
yes,
okay.
And also on my website, expansions.com, I have many videos on YouTube that explain all of this in detail.
All right, so walk me through time traveling. You get in some sort of machine. I'm quite naive, even though I've studied this obsessively to a certain degree. I still don't think I actually know, a physical picture in my mind, if you will, of the whole process from start to finish.
Right, and what we learned at the Montauk Project was every point or coordinate in time and space has a unique frequency. So it doesn't matter if you're time traveling, deep space, and you want to go anywhere in any part of the universe at any time or interuniversal. You know those coordinates, and you match the person, place, or thing to those coordinates. There's instant connection. It creates a vortex that you pass literally from one room into another room.
What does that look like?
Well, when I was doing it, I was lying flat on the table. The equipment was above me. It looked kind of like a mirror or a screen, and the screen would then start to have different colors and energies come out of it, and then it would access that particular point in time and space, and you would just pulled it into it. And then you
literally physically pulled.
It felt like going through a kind of a grinder, kind of energetically. It didn't hurt, but it felt weird, like sparkly and tingly and that kind of thing. And then on the other end, you would be just...
And then you awake, essentially, or you...
You would, no, you would just go right through, and you would be conscious.
You're still conscious the whole time, okay.
Yes, correct. Some people who, unfortunately, maybe had physical illnesses they weren't aware of, didn't make it to the other side. And sometimes where they didn't know a coordinate, and they were just practicing to see where this coordinate was, they would send an expendable person, someone they didn't care about too much if they missed. And that person sometimes would wind up in a wall, in deep space, under an ocean like this.
And this is past or present?
Yeah, it didn't matter.
Or past or future, rather?
Could have been anywhere.
Any point in time has its own unique frequency.
Correct. And what they would do is they would have this, I guess, a resonator or a beacon that would be attached to the person, so that if they were successful on the other side, then they would have a beacon or a sign.
So it's a communication.
Yeah. So then they would have an access.
So I can communicate with somebody in the past.
Yes. Yes. But what we did learn, you can't change the past.
You cannot change the past.
No, they tried many, many times.
Can you change the future?
Well, the future is kind of fluid from our perspective, but from the God mind or the absolute perspective, it's there. It's not changed.
Is it predestined?
It's not predestined. It just is. And when I say that, everything exists somewhere. So any thought you have, any vision of any event, it does exist somewhere. If you can think of it, it exists. And so that's why.
Are there multiple realities?
Infinite.
Infinite reality.
Every thought changes the past.
So what decides the one right now where you and I are talking?
Everyone who is here on this world at this time has the same agreement mentally that this is the sequence of events right now. And so that's what we all accept.
So collectively, on some level, spiritually, we have decided that this is the time and place that you and I will be sitting here having this conversation. You're watching it right now, and so on and so forth.
Right. So, for example, there's a Bob Tuskin, another reality, decided, well, I'm going to have the conference in Miami instead of Philadelphia.
Oh, I hope not.
And so there's that going on there. See?
The technology. What does it take to make this technology? What sort of resources? Why isn't that Stewart Swerdlow, who experienced this, couldn't engineer this or create this for the layman for full disclosure? What's keeping us from seeing that?
Well, I'm not a technician, I'm not a scientist, so to speak, so that I don't have the technique or the ability to create such devices, but they do exist, and the government does have it, and the technology the government has and what other alien beings have are literally millions of years ahead of where the public has it now. And they will never, at least right now, release that information to the public, because then they don't want other people to have access to it and alter what their agenda is.
So you mentioned behind this are malevolent forces.
Yes, but remember, from their perspective, they think they're doing something good for them and for humanity.
At any cost, though.
Right.
And that's when we get into the ritualistic torture and so on and so forth, with disregard for any sanctity of our spirit or our life.
Right. So, for example, when they have sexual magic ritual, they have a sacrifice ritual, to them, this is a formula. They use the bodies and they use the energies like a recipe. Like, if we do this and this and this, we'll get that result. So that's how they look at it. They don't think about feelings, emotions, pain. This doesn't, not in their concept.
This is fascinating to me. I'm so glad we had this conversation. I hope those at home look deeper into it. Expansions.com is the website. And by all means, I want to keep learning about this stuff, and I want to continue to collect the puzzle pieces. When they fit, they fit. When they don't, they don't. Folks, you have to keep an agnostic perspective. You can't just say that on the surface this seems fantastical or fantastic, and therefore it must not be true.
Right. Sometimes truth is stranger than fiction.
It is. Stewart, I'm so glad to have met you here and to have brought you to the third Free Your Mind conference. I have a feeling he might be returning. I have a feeling you might have already returned.
In the all that is, yes.
So one last question, all right, because I can't stop. I wanted to make this video a certain length, but I got one more question. So when you time traveled, and I'm focusing on time travel because I think that's the sexiest, most compelling, perhaps, component of this all. Where did you go? What point in time did you go, and so on and so forth? Do you have distinct memories of this?
Yes, and I've written about this in a couple of my books and in my videos, and the most amazing thing that happened with me is they sent me to the time of Christ. And in that time, my first initial mission was to shoot him.
With a gun?
With a gun.
So you time traveled with a gun?
Correct.
What happened?
And I stood at the bottom of steps, and he was at the top of these steps, and he looked at me, and it's like he knew what I came to do, and I couldn't do it.
Are you a believer in Christ, or is
He existed, but
he existed.
not in the way that
it's been changed, and so on and so forth?
Because he was an alien creation.
He was an alien
It was a
creation.
genetic manipulation by certain groups of alien beings in order to skewer mankind in a certain direction.
A good direction?
Their agenda.
A direction.
A direction. Correct.
And he looked at you.
And I couldn't do it.
You couldn't do it.
No, and I ran away. And as I was running, I was pulled back.
But at that point, did they not already understand what you told me just a moment ago, that we can change the past?
We were in the process of learning that.
You were in the process of learning that.
And they also tried to blow up Hitler.
Blow up Hitler.
And you remember there was...
But was Hitler not in the inner circle on some level of the benevolent forces?
In those days, he was also a pawn. He was being used by certain groups.
Okay.
And he knew that. But they couldn't blow him up. As you know, there was an incident where they tried to destroy the Reichstag in Berlin, and he survived it.
The Reichstag fire? Yeah.
Yeah, because he was supposed to survive in this timeline.
And many point to that as a false flag, where they were going to blame that on a certain group, and as a result, we saw what happened.
So then they realized, after many attempts with other people, not just myself, that you cannot change this timeline, because as soon as you make an attempt to change, it goes into another timeline where that did happen, and then you're not in the current timeline.
And there are infinite timelines.
Infinite.
This is fascinating.
Everything you can think of exists somewhere.
Stewart, thanks again, man. That was awesome.
Welcome.